we're going to move on to Apple handing over Siri to Google Gemini. This is another one I think you picked up. We can both jump in on this one though, but I'm gonna let you start off. What are your thoughts on Apple saying, you know what, Siri is still a laughing matter. We're moving on to this.
This doesn't surprise me. I think everybody saw it coming. I think the surprise is more along the lines of Apple and Google actually signing a truce and shaking hands and agreeing to work together. So, Apple has officially confirmed what many suggested might happen when Tim Cook started using the phrase AI partnership ecosystem, and as you put in your post, with a straight face, Siri is getting another brain transplant. I like your term there. So basically, what we're saying is Siri is behind, and Siri has always been behind. So Apple had originally said, "Oh, we're going to build our own AI models. We're going to make Siri this, and Siri's going to be great at AI." Then they realized, look at Satya Nadella over there spending all that Microsoft money. Look at Google over there spending all that Google money to develop these models. Do we really want to spend that money? Do we really want to compete in this space? Do we need to compete in this space? Need might be the better question. I don't think we want to spend that millions and billions of dollars. So what we're going to do is, we like the way Gemini works. So we're just going to step over there and we're going to knock on the door at Google Plaza and say, "Hey, how much is it going to cost us to put Google Gemini in the Apple iPhone for Siri?" And I'm assuming Macs would also follow that. Oh, that's it? That's the number? Yeah, let's do that. Because now we don't have to worry about educating Siri. We've already got this nice library that we can pull from. Now, what we'll do is we'll get our programmers in there and they will make it all sound all personal and, comfy for the ecosystem, for our folks on these iPhones, like things to sound comfy and pleasant. And we don't have to develop our own models. We don't have to worry about getting caught scraping content. We don't have to worry about accessing content that maybe we don't need to be accessing, or maybe we should be asking permission to do.
Permissions
We
for
get,
losers.
we give up. We give up. We don't need a language model. Google, we'll just use yours. Sounds good.
Yeah, I remember when they announced AI, Apple Intelligence.
Yep,
To their credit, they did say that they would use multiple language models. They opened it with
they did.
OpenAI. That was the first out of the gate. It was a partnership that was supposed to float OpenAI a little bit more and lend it some of the prestige from being on Apple's platform. It seems that now that time is matured, and this was, I think, last year. It's only been a year since they announced that Apple's gone with the tried and true. And what's actually returning the fastest? Google's Gemini is outpacing both OpenAI, Anthropic, and whatever cudgel that Microsoft is using to put together everything in its own small language models. It's beating Amazon. It's beating Salesforce. It's maturing the fastest out of all of them. Apple already has a partnership with Google when it comes to search. This only makes sense for their business model, especially with internal reports that Apple can't figure out necessarily their own small language models or large language models, at least not in a timely manner. Who knows? And given this, if AI lasts 5, 10 years as a product service that people want, I'm assuming they will eventually come up with their own, like they did at Apple Maps, and pivot from that. But in the meantime, as people are getting used to certain use case scenarios for their devices, Apple needs a solution. This is the easiest, fastest, and the one that makes the most sense for them. I don't begrudge them. I do mock them a little bit because, again, this is a continuation of an idea that most of us had in the tech industry, that Apple may be out of good ideas. Now, not to say that their software is bad or their hardware is garbage. It's just the idea of them being the innovators when it comes to the iPad, the iPhone, certain software services on the Mac. I think they're just a company. They're a utility, just like every other company now, and they're incrementally looking for ways to make money by offering us incremental advancements in tech that's already existed. So again, it's kind of the idea that, hey, we couldn't do it on our own. Google take over, and I think they chose the best partner out of us. Unlike Microsoft, who chose, and they couldn't choose Google because for obvious reasons, competitors, but they chose OpenAI, and OpenAI is it's a bonfire of money. That's what it is for them. And I don't know if their path forward is as clear as Google's. Not saying that they can't get there, but Google pretty much has a homegrown, clear path to victory. They are marching on it very quickly, whereas Microsoft's looking at its own small language models, including Anthropic, hoping that OpenAI hits another big advancement. Their pathway is a snake right now. So unless you have some closing words, we'll move on to our next topic.
I was just going to say, I think you hit the nail on the head there, because AI with everybody else, just to keep this short, Copilot, Gemini, et cetera, is so far ahead of where Apple is. If AI stays relevant, I don't know that they would ever catch up. And maybe Apple, they always seem to have the crystal ball at times. They're always late to the party, but when they arrive at the party, they arrive with a bang and they usually get it right, aka folding phones that people have been asking for the past few years. When they arrive, they'll get it right. And Apple may be foreshadowing that AI in its current form isn't going to survive long term. So for now, to your point, they're going to partner with someone, and maybe if we get fooled and it goes long term, we will develop our model later.
Definitely. Our next topic is Microsoft and its community first makeover, first AI makeover. We're still on the topic of AI. I know people are probably washing their ears out and rolling their eyes, but we got a couple more stories. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but this is what the industry is talking about. And until that bubble bursts, we're going to keep covering it. But we're going to cover it our own way, which is skepticism. And I think many of you might be following suit. Microsoft unveiled a 5-pillar plan to make its rapid AI data center expansion appear more community-oriented. We talked about this last podcast last week about Microsoft partnering with a community grid, electrical grid, in order to help update its infrastructure, but also siphon off the electricity for its own uses. They sold it as a win-win. I sold it as a win-loss for the community, for state regulation of its own electrical grid and AI regulations in the future. This 5-pillar plan seems to be a marketing way of saying, hey, I know we're going to be sucking up all the electricity and perhaps poisoning the water, but we're doing it for you guys. The focus areas include energy responsibility, water stewardship, job creation, fair taxation, and AI education. A lot of these expand into essentially saying that we're going to have transparency on the amount of electricity that we take versus the amount of electricity or electrical grid maintenance that we offer. Water stewardship, as we mentioned, that water is going to be sucked up into these server areas and then reused. That's kind of their way of stewarding it. Job creation, that's how you get people to buy in by saying, hey, building these data centers will create jobs. Unfortunately, they're only temporary. And then this is where the fair taxation and AI education come into place. They're saying, for all the stuff that we're building and using, we will expend we will pay the taxes on it. Who knows if they find loopholes to get out of that. And the education part is to help create jobs that are long lasting, that center around education. Now, again, I don't know if they're going to be able to, the idea of AI, at least as many have been sold and many CEOs are talking behind our backs, is that it's going to take away jobs and make line go up by getting rid of employees who make line go down. So it's weird that they're using doublespeak. Microsoft acknowledged the massive energy demands of AI and cites projects that U.S. data centers, electricity grids could triple. So they're admitting could triple by 2035, and they're already, costing us in communities, raising our electrical costs by 2 to 10%, depending on where you live at. The company promises not to raise local electricity costs, although it depends on the special industrial rates and structures around these projects. Plans to add 7.9 gigawatts of new power generation in the Midwest, where again they just recently partnered with. Water usage remains a concern for the communities, because especially for those who are in drought-prone regions, and again with advancing climate change, I don't know how they're going to generate more water for water-strapped areas. And again, we already talked about job creation relies heavily on public-funded apprenticeship programs, so they could start, offering courses for AI prompt, commanders and whatnot. But without the community saying we need them, what does any of that mean? What are your thoughts on this?
That's why I was looking off in a different direction. I'm thinking it through. I think we're at the point to where the public outcry is going to be great. I already hear it here where I am, because I am close to some of our larger companies. Some of our larger data centers are about 35, 40 minutes away from me. And we have already had several news stories on our local news about, we don't want data centers. We've even seen some protests. We don't want data centers. And it kind of reminds me of something that AT&T and some of the major phone carriers went through several years ago, when everybody was wanting that fast internet, when everybody was wanting that fast UVerse. What did AT&T go out and do? They went out and they put up cabinets, everywhere to deploy UVerse. And then the public came back and said, those cabinets are ugly. We really don't want those in our neighborhood. And AT&T kind of looked back and said, but you asked for, yeah, but we wanted you to make it pretty. We wanted it to blend in. And that's exactly where my brain went while you were talking about this, because this happened a lot in this neighborhood that I'm in. There's going to have to be some sort of acceptance. And I think the companies that want to deploy these data centers, that want to, put AI in these data centers, it's going to drive the cost of Copilot up. It's going to drive the cost of your Google subscription up. But we've got to take responsibility for the usage. And we've also got to find a way to appease the people that live around these data centers. So does Microsoft build a data center? I'm just going to call out an area here. Does Microsoft build a data center in Tampa, Florida somewhere? And they absorb the cost for that data center. The power does not go up to the citizens of Tampa because Microsoft absorbed the cost of that data center. But while you're there polluting the air that the people in Tampa breathe, you're doing something to contribute to the community. You're doing something to lower taxes. You're doing something to make it easy. Because if you continue to make it hard, having AI in general will be very challenging to do. Because it's just like the AT&T UVerse cabinets. You've got to have that high-speed internet, so let us put a cabinet down. Eventually, the arguments just stopped. AT&T never went back and decorated any cabinets. They never went back and painted any cabinets. The argument just stopped because people realized, oh, we need this. Put up more cabinets. And that's how it ended, because people realized they needed it. So maybe Microsoft, Google, etc. need to do a better job of explaining AI to people and going, yeah, you need this. This is why. This is why we're building these data centers. This is why we're upping the usage on the power grid that you're paying for. Because when people don't understand what they're paying for and why they need it or why they don't, that's when that anger starts.
Yeah, I think a lot of these companies, and I'll kind of end on this, are on the back foot when it comes to AI, because at least with internet and phones, especially with smartphones and like you said, internet infrastructure and bandwidth, there was an immediate need being fulfilled. And that, especially for rural areas, that shortens the length and the amount of time it takes for people to be connected. So if you're someone in a rural area and you have to go to the bank in order to deposit your work check. Having internet and having a phone that can take a picture of your checking account shortens that trip. If the trip is 30 minutes to get into town, you no longer need to waste that 30 minutes. You can go dedicate to finish washing your clothes, drying your clothes, washing dishes, playing with the kids, whatnot. That was something people intuitively figured out when they said, I need a phone, but I need my phone to be connected to other things so that it makes my life easier. Having AI doesn't necessarily connect everybody. It almost isolates us in some regards, and we can link off to stories about that. But there's no immediate, like, when I get this thing, I can start doing other things to make my life easier. It's only so far made the lives of CEOs and executives easier by firing people. And until they can figure out a way, until someone comes up with a more intuitive way to make AI necessary, they're going to keep fighting these battles, and people are going to keep scratching their head going, I don't really need this, and I don't need you in my backyard with this giant building that's taking up, what used to be, maybe a walkway or a path or where I go hunting or whatever. So good luck to them. I don't see it lasting very long. And